Everybody, welcome back to our Chai with Coaches live stream. It is Thursday and it is 3 o'clock. So here we are. Naheed, welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to be here. This is our last meeting for the year.
Yeah,
And
it's
what
the
a
last one for
year it's
2020.
been.
Understatement of the year, literally. Yeah, no, it's been an interesting 2020. And I think I personally have mixed feelings about it ending because actually it wasn't all bad. I think I had there were definitely positives that came out of it for me at least. But I think one thing we wanted to talk about today we discussed was talking about people's goals and kind of intentions for 2021, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I like to think about this is first by taking stock in where you are today. Because as you said, you'd be surprised by how many things you may have learned, how many different ways you have grown, and all the things that you would never have experienced had this particular time and situation not occurred. So I think starting with some stock taking in your life, don't worry about what the economy is doing, don't worry about what all these industries are doing. How did it impact you specifically?
And that's a tough thing for some people to do too, though, right? Because we intertwine our stories with everything happening in the world as though they are directly related or they're exactly the same thing, and they're really not. We tend to collapse those things because they're in our heads. They're exactly the same thing, but
Yeah.
separating the impact to us versus the impact to the rest of the world, you know, there is obviously what impacts the world impacts us, right? But it's a question of what we can control, what we can do about things, and we can do things about what is in our immediate space, right? In our immediate vicinity, in our circles, if you will. And so,
Yeah.
what can you control? What can you do things about? Is you, right? You can do something about your behaviors, about your life. You can't necessarily do things about what's happening everywhere else in the world, except maybe you can vote. but um, but yeah. So in terms of 2021, Naheed, what do you? We have a little bit. I wouldn't say differing, but we have different approaches to this intention setting, goal setting for 2021. So why don't you talk about yours, and I'll jump in and share mine after you're done.
Sure. I have right off the bat, I need to tell you, I've got a dirty, ugly confession to make as a coach, Drew.
What's that?
I just don't like goal setting.
That sounds like a story, but go for it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like it. At least getting down to the nitty gritty of things. And by the way, I'm doing it, but not very happily. But I will say this, what I do like is the stock taking. Because you're right, for some people, this feels so uncomfortable going inside. For me, it just actually feels very natural. And the way I recommend it to my clients, this is an easy, dirty, simple way of doing it. It doesn't feel overwhelming, right? Is create a big giant circle on your page. This is your pie. And without getting overly analytical or technical about it, just start creating the pies, just start drawing pieces of that pie and see where you feel you're spending the most amount of your attention and focus on. Again, it doesn't matter if you say that you spent 20 hours a week on something and it happens to be 15 or 10, it's where you feel your energy is going to. So make all these various pies and first just see where you're spending your energy and focus. Because you got to understand the baseline, right? There's no way to make a change, and you don't know what to change, quite frankly, if you don't understand exactly where you're coming from. And then, with that in mind, you can create another pie and say, okay, this is where I was in 2020. This is where I would like to be in 2021. And it feels to me a lot less overwhelming than having to sit down and say, okay, I want to do this. How many people said, I want to lose 10 pounds? I don't know what it is about 10. The number 10 is just like everywhere. 10 pounds, right? Um, those things, what are your opinions when we have all these New Year's resolutions?
Well, resolutions are different from goals, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Resolutions, like we talked about this before, it's like a running joke at this point. Like what's your resolution? Okay, cool. What's your resolution in February? Because it's going to change, right? I
Yeah.
mean, how closely you're staying to that. I think resolutions are different from goals, and which are also different from intentions. They're related, but they're not the same. And I like the pie approach For me personally, it's cake rather than pie, but that's
Okay.
personal preference.
What kind of
But
cake, by the way?
depends on my mood. But German chocolate maybe,
Hmm.
um,
Okay.
or just plain birthday cake. I'm basic like that sometimes. But I personally, my approach changes depends on the client. Some clients do well with written like specific goals. Other clients do better with what you said, with the energy, kind of taking stock and figuring out where they want to go and where they want to invest their energy in 2021. For me, me personally, I do well with kind of a mix. I have certain intentions that are underlying the goals that I want to establish for myself, and those goals can change, right? I make that clear to myself and make that commitment to myself that those goals can and will probably eventually change, because as my needs change, as I grow myself, that's going to change. But the key is to actually grow and to actually set those intentions and stick with it. But in terms of goals, people talk about SMART goals a lot, right? Specific, measurable, I forgot,
Action
achievable.
based. Yeah.
Yeah, achievable. What there are, I forgot the R is.
I don't know. The last
The
one, T is
reason
time based.
time based. Yeah, the reason I don't like that is that because I don't stick with that version of SMART. I have my own version of SMART goals, which is specific, meaningful rather than measurable, right? Um, and accountable, things you can be accountable for. I don't care if it's achievable. Things that are achievable are really easy. I don't want it to be easy. I want it to be something that I'm pushing myself to do because that's where the growth is, right? So I want it to be holding myself accountable to it, and then I want it to be related to what my goal, what my business is, or whatever that particular area is that I'm focusing on, and then time based. I do want to have a goal, a date in mind, because otherwise, just the old adage, a goal without a date and is a due date is just a dream, right? So that's my version of smart that I like to push forward to my clients and the folks that I work with, because it's just to me it means more. It's meaningful. It's accountable. Like you're holding yourself accountable. You're not just doing something that's achievable, because literally achievable is waking up in the morning. There, I met my goal. You're letting yourself off the hook a little bit, right?
I really liked what you just said about it being meaningful and the intention underneath it. Because frankly, until you just said it, it didn't occur to me. And then I'm like, wait a second. If I'm doing something with intention, if my intention in a particular area is to feel better in whatever this area happens to be, let's say health, okay? All of a sudden, my willingness to sit down and say, okay, what am I going to do that can help me get to that place just becomes so much higher. It's not an exercise just to get things done. It's not a check in the box kind of thing, but rather it's like, wow, I am emotionally connected to this, and this is just my way of telling myself how I plan on getting there. So something about that just really resonated very strongly with me. The meaning part, yeah, it got to be meaning. Otherwise, if you don't care about it, no matter how amazing the outcome may or may not be, it's not going to happen for you because you just don't care about it.
Right, and that's I think that's the trap a lot of people fall into. I had a client who his goal was to make $1 million. Right, that was his goal. And when I asked him, okay, why? He's like, what do you mean why? I'm like, why do you want to make $1 million? What's behind that for you? What's meaningful about that to you? And asking that question was just no one had ever asked him that question. It just $1 million sounded great. He wanted to make $1 million because it turns out he heard another person in a meeting he was in say that they wanted to make $1 million and that was their goal. That sounds good. Yeah, I'll adopt that. But I was like, what's that gonna enable you to do that you can't do right now? And it turns out 9 out of 10 things on his bucket list were things he could do immediately, and he just wasn't doing because he's waiting to make $1 million to
Right.
do them. And that one thing, yeah, was buying $1 million house, which obviously in that situation, he wants to buy a cash. Sure, that's fine. That's awesome. That's a great goal, and that's fantastic. But if you can do 9 things out of 10 things on your bucket list right now, why wait? I mean, I think if anything, 2020 has taught us that putting things off is not a good idea. If you can do something right now, just do it, because who knows when it's not going to be available to do again. I mean, I can't tell you how much I miss hanging out with my friends on a regular basis, and I can't right now. Right? I miss traveling. I can't do that as much as I like to right now. Like I can drive somewhere. That's about it.
Yeah, and I think everything that you're saying, I couldn't agree with more because this idea of putting your life on hold until fill in the blank, until I do
Yep.
this, until this happens. we will only be happy until fill in the blank. We have that spouse, we have the kids, we have the, the white picket fence. One thing you realize is that you're spending your whole life waiting. And in truth, we have only this one life, right? Sometimes it might feel like it's a pain, but it truly is a gift. Like, think about all the people who don't make it past their first 5 years, 10 years, 25 years. It doesn't matter. And if all you're going to do is wait for that time when some internal message, right? This mental message is telling you, oh well, I'm only allowed to be happy or to be satisfied with myself until I fulfill these 10 obligations, whatever they happen to be. And yeah, we learned that in 2020. This is not the kind of way to live a life.
Yeah, and these goals are just arbitrary. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a huge movie nerd, but this is actually an extra nerdy thing because it's a Hindi movie. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's called Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. It's from 2010 or something like that. It's actually a
I
really good
don't
movie.
watch indie English movies, so I absolutely don't watch Hindi
Fair. I forgot
movies.
that you don't. Yeah, it's true. You don't watch movies. Okay. Anyway, so for those of you who are Bollywood nuts, there are a couple on my friends list who might be watching this. But there's a character in the movie. I'll explain it hopefully. There's a character in the movie who basically he sacrificed all his relationships to make money, right? And every time someone says, "Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this?" He loves to cook. He loves to travel. He loves to do all that stuff. He's like, "Oh, after 40, when I turn 40, when I turn 40, when I turn 40." His whole thing is to make as much money as possible between the age of 28 and 40. And so he's throwing his entire life into work. And it's not until he goes on this trip with his friends that he realizes that like he's been like letting life kind of pass him by. And he's losing connections with all the people that he cares about and losing connections with the possibilities of actually living his life and that these things are possible right now. And he, again, that after 40, who says 40 is the cutoff? Who says 30 is the cutoff? The same thing is true for people, in our culture and where like women have to get married or are supposed to get married by the time they're 30, or guys, everyone's supposed to get married by the time they're 30, basically. Like you turn 30, married automatically. Like, oh, you two are 30,
Exactly.
just
You're
get
over
married.
the hill. You just take what you can get.
Yeah, you're over 30. You two are over 30. You guys are, well, just get married.
You're perfect for each other.
Yeah, you're perfect. You're both over 30. That's all you need. That's the only thing you need, right? That's why not? It's just arbitrary numbers that they don't mean anything. They're just pulled from. You might as well just pluck them from the air. Like just roll a dice. Okay, what add up 4 dice, 35. Cool. 35 is when I want to do this. It
So
doesn't mean anything.
I'm going to give you my own story about that. Are you familiar with the Red Hat ladies? I don't know very much about it, but there is actually, I don't know if it's a global organization or a national organization with women above 50s,
Mm-hmm.
and they would wear these red hats. And I don't know what the significance of the organization is. I know practically nothing about them, but somehow in my head, I got it. I got to believe that when you turn 50, life magically becomes better. That you're gonna just fall in love with yourself, you're gonna be happy in your body, you're gonna, just everything is just going to be so perfect. And in my 30s, when life was the opposite of perfect and I was less than happy with me and everything around me, I sort of grabbed onto this notion that it's as simple as turning 50. And I kept waiting for 50 and kept waiting for 50. And like, when I turn 50, I promised myself it's all going to turn around. And then one day, I don't know how, but I got the inspiration that, you know what? One day I'm going to turn 50. And unless I do something today, I'm going to be the same person when I'm 50 as I was in my 30s. And it then further occurred to me that the people that I associated with as having a very sort of put together, easy life, things are going, they're happy with themselves, basically. I'm like, they probably had to work in their 30s and 40s to get to that place in the 50s. And I was like, okay, I can handle that. I can do the work to get to the 50s. And that was how I operated for a period of time. And then eventually it occurred to me, like, why wait till I'm 50? I mean, if I'm going to do the work, I might as well start enjoying life earlier. I don't have to wait until I'm 50. If there's nothing magical about that number, I can pick any
Yeah.
number.
Yeah.
Crazy, I know.
No, but it's what happens though, right? I mean, look, it's I don't think it's crazy because it's a human condition. We all do it. We've all been guilty of that, right? Like, I mean, think about it. The age of 18, right? For in some places it's drinking age, in some places it's smoking age, some places 21 is drinking age. These are all relatively arbitrary numbers,
Hmm.
right? It just depends on what jurisdiction you happen to be in. I mean, that's just one easy example, but people pull these numbers out of nowhere, and we set our own limitations or our own empowerment situations based on what it is. It's all story, right? It's like, okay, it goes back to that, right? Like to the idea of story and what are we telling ourselves? We can either tell stories to ourselves that limit us, or we can tell stories to us that empower us, right? Which one do you want to do? And you can empower yourself right now. You can also limit yourself right now if you want, but you can also really empower yourself right now. And I think that's one thing that like I said, I think this past year, if anything, has reinforced that for me in terms of just I'm just gonna if I see an opportunity to do something that I want to do, and I have the means to do it, I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna, obviously if it's outside your means, don't like go into significant debt to do stuff you need to do, right? But if you're able to do it, if you have the means to do it, why not? What's holding you back other than your
Right.
own story?
So we've got a few listeners on here, and I'd love to know if anybody has a specific goal related challenge that they are finding. Because goals are nothing new. If you work for a corporate employer, you are required to make them every single year. But it'd be great to know, how are you handling creating goals for yourself, because we are separate from our business. We even sometimes, though it doesn't feel like it, how do you create the goals for yourself so that you're creating forward momentum, right? Nobody's going to get there, wherever there happens to be, in just one swell swoop. And plus, life would be really boring if you did. Um,
Yeah,
so, what are some of our listeners doing? And while they're doing that, can you actually repeat your version of SMART goals? Because I really liked it.
sure. Specific,
Mm-hmm.
meaningful, as in it has to mean something to you. There's got to be something under the intention there, right? Accountable. It's something you can be accountable to, not just achievable, but accountable. Something that you can push yourself. It can be something that's a stretch, but you're accountable to it. Um, Relevant, and then or related to what you're doing, related to something either business or personal goals of yourself or meaning values of yourself, and then time based. So you want to have a due date of some sort, right? And then, again, that due date can change if it needs to. Stuff happens. Things come up. 2020 came up, right? So I mean,
And it accelerates stuff too.
yes, absolutely.
Because
I mean, dude, this YouTube situation would not have happened had it not been for COVID. I'll be honest. I was putting it off for a long, long time. Let me tell
yeah.
you about putting off goals. Okay, I bought a mic and everything to do this YouTube channel 2 years ago. Actually, no, 3 years now because it's end of 2020 now. 3 years ago at this point, 2 years before 2020 started. I was like, oh, I need to make a YouTube channel. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. Didn't happen. Suddenly, this whole pandemic happens, and I'm locked in my house with my dog, and I'm like, okay, I'm bored. I got nothing to do. Let me work on my business. Okay, well, you know what? Let me do that YouTube thing that I talked about doing for forever. And then I started doing it, and I was scared to death initially, but eventually, I'm not saying I have any measure of success at this point. I have less than 100 followers, so but it's fun at this point. I have a good time with it, and I think for you and I get to talk about stuff like this on a public forum. How I get to help folks who are jumping on and asking questions, and I get to highlight small businesses, and that's fun for me. So I mean, this wouldn't happen if it wasn't for 2020. If it wasn't for the pandemic.
So let me ask you this question. We hear all the time creating goals are important. What do you feel? I'll give you my opinion afterwards, but what do you feel are the reasons why having maybe written goals are important to people?
A couple reasons. So writing things down, as you know, our brains process things differently. We write them down versus when we even just talk about them or type them. Writing physically makes a difference in the way our brains process information. So it forces us to process things in terms of that's okay. That's an outcome we're going towards. So that's one thing. The other thing is it gives us something to look forward to, right? It gives us something to plan for and a measure of success or a measure of something we can look forward to doing in our lives, the things that give us joy. That's why it's important for the goals to be meaningful, because it's something that you actually going to look forward to. It's meaningful to you. It speaks to your values. It's something that gives you joy, ideally, or will lead to something that gives you joy or enables you to have joy somehow. So that's I think the power of goals, at least for me. When I set goals for myself or things that I want to do or intentions, they mean something to me. They're something that I really am either passionate about or is going to be a means to an end to get into something I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I like it. You know, I look at the world from a very much of an energy standpoint, and we are creator beings, whether we recognize it or not. What we intend, what we are focusing our attention on and intention on is what you're going to create in your life, period. And to me, creating a goal and writing it down, as you said, creates an energetic anchor. If you don't have this thing where you're anchoring, this is it, make the decision. This is what I choose to create in my life. And as you say, it doesn't have to always be immediately, but just setting that energetic intention starts the process, creates the energies, the universe starts responding in ways, people show up, resources show up, but it really requires you to say, yeah, I'm worthy and deserving of this. So for that reason, I'm very big on writing goals. I take a actual pad and paper and I write them out. The second reason why I like writing goals is sometimes when you're writing, you can short circuit that internal conversation. Oh no, that's not going to happen. There's no way that this is going to be successful, or I'm going to be successful. Right? Sometimes when you're writing, it just kind of flows, and especially once you give yourself permission, things just begin to start flowing, and you're putting away that critical monkey mind. You're moving it to the side, and you'd be surprised at how many deep inspirational ideas and processes start coming out of all of this, right? This has been a tremendously creative period, and we're going to see that in the coming years. We're going to see the fruits of that in the coming years. Like, how many people are going to be writing books? How many people are going to be doing something like you did, completely different? So I too like the idea of writing goals because it helps you anchor that. If you don't anchor it, if you don't have a very strong conviction around it, and in your words, meaning behind it, then you're more than likely not going to pay much attention to it.
Yeah, I love that, and I'll take a step further actually with the in terms of the energy, in terms of the universe responding and that kind of thing to energy. It's not just setting an intention is one thing, right? It's in your head, but if you take the second you take an action towards that thing, you'll feel the reaction come back, right? And the reaction is going to, as long as it's a positive action towards what you're going for and it's meaningful to you,
Mm-hmm.
that reaction is going to be a positive one way or another, whether you think it is or not. But it's taking that extra step. I think the law of attraction thing. I think I was talking to someone about this the other day, and it annoys me where it's gone because it's like, oh, I'm just gonna type it on Facebook and I'm gonna get $1 million. Well, no, it's not meaningful to you. Why do you want $1 million? What do you need $1 million to do that you can't do right now? One, two, what are you doing about it? If you want to win the lottery, for example, and then you haven't bought a ticket, how do you plan to win the lottery? You got to actually enter the lottery to win it. That's the step. That's the thing you got to do, the action. So take an action in advancement of that particular goal, that outcome you want out of things. Because otherwise, you're not going to get anything. You're setting that intention, but you're also pushing that energy towards that thing. And then the universe is going to respond accordingly because it's like responding to you and your energy and your positive energy towards that thing.
Yeah, you know what? I work a lot and I teach people a lot on the law of attraction. And the number one thing that people will say with affirmations, it doesn't work for me. That just doesn't work. Or the law of attraction is not working. Well, it's working. You may not like how it's working. But one thing that's really important is that when you have an intention, you create this decision, it has to have emotion behind it. Most of us do it from a very mental place. And if you're coming from a mental place, in other words, if you don't have meaning, it's not relevant to you, there's not emotion tied behind it, then the chances of you attracting that into your life is pretty small because the engine of law of attraction is emotion. So saying these affirmations with emotion is really important. And then the second part, which you touched on, is that what is required is inspired action. That's how I view it. So I have a lot of clients who take a lot of action and they don't see the results. And my coach, Jeff Miller, this is his formula that he shared with me. There's BE times do, equals have, HAVE. So the way this works is in the haves column, those are all the goals you want. And they can be tangible, but they can also be intangible. And then you move over one step to the left to the doing column. And say you have 5 things that you need to do in order to achieve whatever that goal is. And then you go to the B column. Say you're doing all these goals, but these action steps, but you're doing it from a place of fear, doubt, insecurity. So you put a 0 in the B column because you're not coming from that place of positive expectation, but you put a 5 in the do column. So 0 times 5, so even though you're taking the action, 0 times 5 is 0, right? And then, kind of speaking to your point, say you're somebody like me, I love to visualize. First thing I do in the morning, meditation, visualization, all the rest of that. I do those 5 items every day without fail. And I'm visualizing all these great things, and opportunities are presenting themselves, but I'm not taking action. So it's 5 in the column for me on the B side, 0 in the column on the do side. And guess what? I'm still at 0. So it's about blending the being coming from that place of positive expectation with the inspired action that comes from the doing. And there you have the magic. That's where the universe is like, yeah, this person is aligned with what it is that he or she wants, which means I can bring it to them. I have an opportunity to bring it to them.
I like that. No, that's great. I think, and that's accurate. Honestly, it's just it really comes down to what you do, not just wanting something. It's not
Mhm.
important. It's not enough to just want something bad enough, right? You can want all you want, but if you don't do anything towards it, what's the point, right?
You got to help yourself.
Yeah. So no, that's awesome. So for the folks who are watching, thank you guys for joining in. I wanted to. We're coming up on time a little bit here, so we wanted to kind of give you guys a chance to ask any questions you might have, or talk about some goals or intentions you have for the next year, some energy, how you want to use your energy right now, and either way, this is going to be our last broadcast for the year. So we wanted to give folks a chance to talk about it, but we also want to bring this up because it's relevant for a lot of folks right now as you're going into whether you're talking about business goals or personal goals. It's a relevant conversation. It's as we're setting intentions for 2021, we want to be intentional about setting intentions.
Absolutely.
Intentional about setting
Strategic. There
intentions.
you go.
There you go. That's what I was looking for. Strategic about setting intentions. So yeah, but for those, Naheed, it's been a great couple months doing this. This is awesome. We'll continue. We'll start back up again in January. And
Absolutely.
for those of you guys who are watching us, who have been tuning in, week after week, and even if you just tuned in once, that's awesome. Thanks so much for tuning in and watching it. And if you watch it after the fact, thank you again. Thank you as well for that. That's awesome. We really appreciate it. And this is fun for us. Hopefully, it's valuable for you guys. And if you guys want to send us ideas of things you guys want to talk about, questions you might have beforehand, topics you want to discuss, we'd be happy to talk about those things. Naheed, anything you want to say before we close out here?
Yeah, I would really like people to take an opportunity and find 2 to 5 things, 3 to 5 things that they are proud of for this year and give themselves a physical hug. It's surprising how much that feeling of touch it fires all kinds of neurotransmitters like serotonin, which is the feel good drug inside of us. Really, even if you have to stretch deep, find 3 to 5 things that you were proud of and focus on that for the next few weeks as we wind down 2020.
I like that. And actually, I would take a step further and say, take those things and if they really brought you joy, even if they're a little bit of joy, take those things and multiply them in 2021. If they
Absolutely.
brought you joy in the midst of all this stuff happening in 2020, that means something. And those things mean whatever those things are. Look for the patterns and see what the values are that they speak to, and really live into those values in 2021, because that's what's going to keep you going. If they kept you going during the pandemic, probably keep you going the rest of your life. So,
Excellent. Great advice. So it was lovely connecting with everybody who's been on these past few months and looking forward to seeing them and more next year.
yeah, and I want to give a shout out to Hannah. Thank you so much for running these things. She's fantastic. So thank you very much. And Naheed, thank you for joining me on this coaching journey with folks in the public eye. And it's not always easy having these conversations publicly, but I think it's fun. Honestly, it's become a lot of fun. For me, it's you look at my earlier videos. Not that I'm amazing now, but just my earlier
You're
videos, I was
amazing.
definitely
You're
weird.
amazing.
I think I'm doing better. I'm doing better. I'm not amazing yet, but I think I'll get there eventually. I'm on the way.
Absolutely.
I'm on the way there. So thank you all so much for joining in. Please hit the like button, hit subscribe if you like the content we're putting up. We appreciate it, and we'd love to throw you guys some more content that's relevant to you guys and that's specific to what you guys are looking to do. So let us know. Leave a comment below, hit the like button, hit subscribe, reach out to us. Our information is going to be in the description for those of you guys watching after the fact. And thank you guys so much. Happy New Year, happy holidays, happy Merry Christmas, whatever you celebrate. Enjoy it, whether you're able to be with family or not. Enjoy it and make the most of it. And we'll see you guys in 2021.
All right. Looking forward to the journey.
Take care.